So last night's interview was with Master Perez. Unfortunately, the internet connection wasn't too good, so the internet gods were not helping me out last night. But it was a great interview. I've admired Master Perez for quite a long time. I remember when I first started Taekwondo, I saw his picture on all the magazines and read his story and really, I had a lot of respect for him. So it was a great honour for me to interview Master Perez last night, and I wasn't disappointed. So there is some problems with the video. It does stall a little bit and some of the audio is off a little bit, but stick with it because there's some nuggets of gold in there with, some great knowledge that you can pick out from this interview. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So, okay, enjoy guys. Hi everyone. So today's interview is with Olympic gold medalist, Taekwondo legend, Master Perez.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, sir, yes. Firstly, I'd like to pass on my thoughts to everyone in California affected by the fires. I hope you, your family, and all your friends are well.
Everything is good. It's a challenging time, but it's the least of our challenges with the COVID virus and everything else that's going on. Yeah, so we're healthy, we're okay, that's what matters.
Yeah, definitely. So just to give the listeners a look into your background, you're an 8th Dan in Taekwondo, an Olympic gold medalist from 1992 Barcelona Olympics, a martial art TV star, a politician, councilman, an author. You were previously on the board of directors on the US Olympic Committee, along with other roles. You run your own martial arts Taekwondo school, the Gold Medal Center.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just wondering how you manage to get 30 hours in the day and 8 days in the week, because there's no way that you can do everything you do in the regular 24/7.
Well, we try our best. I think one of the most important things is that I learned a long time ago, in order to achieve goals, you have to set goals and small goals. So I try to keep busy with different goals. I went on to law school. Post law school, I went into the Olympic Committee movement, the board of director, and sometime on the executive committee. I went with the Olympic Council of Asia. And most recently now, I'm on the Association of National Olympic Committee as a commissioner for ethics. So keeping that kind of busy schedule is important. I add to that family life. My children, of course, come first and foremost, and their development. And but it's better than being bored. So I try to. It's a full day. I take a nap in the middle. That's my secret.
That's great. I mean, it certainly is a full day for you. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's okay. It could be worse. We could have nothing to do, and that would be challenging.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And there's always a positive. Yeah, definitely. So let's go back to growing up as a young 12-year-old boy living in New Jersey, New York. I mean, how was it, and what brought you to Taekwondo?
So I was an inner city kid. My mother had left my father when I was about 5 on Christmas Eve, and so I was living in the city. It's a dangerous place to live, and on my way to school, I would walk my sister, and kids would bother us or try to bother me. So I had read a book where the Taekwondo character was very powerful. It was a book called The Son of the Flying Tiger, and I actually have a copy of it on my bedside to remind me of my beginnings. I ran past a Taekwondo school when I had moved towards this new area in town. After I ran past it, the day after I was away from the kids, I came in to join. The instructor looked at me and said I was too small, my hair was too long, and I would never be any good. So I was like, well, I kind of need Taekwondo. So he says, sign you up. I said, well, she's downstairs. So I took the paper, I signed myself up, and I took the money from my paper route and started taking Taekwondo classes so that I could protect myself and protect my sister on the way home from school. And that's how it all started.
Brilliant. Excellent. Huh? And who was your instructor back then? Can you?
So back then I was lucky. This small town that I moved into after I lived in New York City had a world-class Taekwondo program with a person who was the Korean national champion. His student was the national champion in the US. And then my music program was actually a guy who went on to play guitar in a very famous jazz band and still plays in that jazz band now. So in this small little area, all because of circumstance and opportunity, I walked into a music school with one of the best guitar players in the world, and Taekwondo with one of the best players in the world at that point in time. And he had developed a handful of really successful champions. So because of that, I was fortunate. His name was Ki Chung Kim. Master Kim passed away a few years ago. He was one of the first generation of Koreans to come to the United States, and they tended to settle in the New York area. So I was very lucky.
And I'm guessing that the guitarist had a big influence in you. I'm looking at the guitar.
I got a few guitar. I got a few guitars behind me, and a few you can't see the rest of them. Guitar, I started before Taekwondo. I started guitar when I was 5. There were 3 or 4 things that influenced me as a youngster. I watched the Beatles play in Shea Stadium and decided I wanted to play guitar. And I started in Catholic school with nuns hitting me with a ruler. I was trying to play Jingle Bells and I couldn't remember it. And then I went on to practice with that Julio Fernandez, and I spent a lot of time playing in New York and New Jersey nightclubs, opening for a band called Twisted Sister.
Yeah.
And so I opened at the Fountain Casino for them in front of 20,000 people. So I decided at that point the only way I wanted to play guitar was to be that way. I had been playing clubs, 3,000 and 4,000 or 2,000 people. But once you play at that level, there's nothing like it. So at 22, 23, I had been playing in clubs since I was 15. I decided I had to decide between Taekwondo or music. And I chose Taekwondo because it was in my control. I could fight, hit somebody else and win. Music, either they like you, they like the way you look, or they like the way you sing, or they don't. There's not a lot you can do about it. Taekwondo, I can affect someone with my ability.
Brilliant. Yeah. No, that's excellent. So, I mean, you've been described as tough, as arrogant, as smart, as loved, as hated. And that, personally, is well, it's just by your friends. I mean, that was speaking to Juan Moreno, who's a great friend of yours.
Juan's a great guy. I made a choice a long time ago as a youngster. I was an oddly shaped kid. I had big, strong legs, a big butt, little skinny chest. And so I didn't really have a lot of self-confidence in the way I looked. And then I was a musician, and I liked playing music. And my people around me, there wasn't the kind of life. Kids I was around, kids went to jail for drugs or got in trouble or went to great schools. So I decided I was going to be that other kid. So at that point, I made a decision not to care what other people thought about what you did or what you say, but to be a character person, which is one of the things I liked in my instructor. So I chose to believe in what I believed in, do what I wanted to do, and then hold myself accountable and not really care what other people thought. I then went on to amass, I liked philosophy. So in the philosophical sense of a perfect man, you should have an artistic self, an academic self, an athletic self. And so I went on to practice Taekwondo for the athletic self and excel at that. Music was my art. And then I went on to law school for my degree. And I did that in part because I didn't want to be marginalized as someone who was only an athlete or someone who was only a musician or someone who was only an academic, because I was an inner city kid and a minority, and people tend to put you in a box. So I was a very challenged put in a box. And when people would attempt to do that, I wouldn't suffer it. And I don't think anyone should suffer fools. So the arrogant part comes from confidence. I think people mistake confidence as arrogance. They would prefer you to be falsely humble. I'm not falsely humble. I'm humble in my abilities, but I'm honest in my capabilities. And so I think people struggle with that, but I'm okay with that. I think those are personal choices. But I think you need to do that. I think it's challenging. I think you need to work hard to get yourself together. And then I think you shouldn't be shy about that. You should be polite, but you also shouldn't suffer fools. It's never been my strong suit.
Well, I mean, certainly speaking your mind and saying things as you see them. I mean, it doesn't always bring the best out in others, but being honest and consistent seems to have done you well. So I think
I think it's tough. I think it's tough for people. I think the problem is I think that you first have to be honest with yourself. So for me, I start with myself because this is something that's hard for people to understand unless they've done it. When you walk into an arena, whether you're competing at a local tournament or in an Olympic arena, the other guy is not going to care whether you're good or bad. He's going to beat you up if he can, knock you out if he can. So if you're dishonest with yourself and you falsely believe that you're good, you're going to have a reckoning at that moment. It's one of my favorite parts of Taekwondo. There's no room for nonsense. Either you're good or you're bad. And that comes very quickly to an understanding, whether it's in your Taekwondo school or in the arena. So that's always been my thing, and I prefer honesty. So the instructors who told me what I did poorly were the ones I listened to, not the ones who told me I was awesome. It was the ones who said, you are okay, here's what you could do better to be great. And I think that's what you really need. That's a tough road, though, for people to hoe, because most people prefer to hear what they do well. And there are times where there's times for that. But when it comes to the athletic arena, the academic arena, or even the professional arena or artistic arena, you got to be brutally honest with yourself. It's a competitive world, and we compete to survive.
Well, definitely. And then obviously talking about competing, I mean, going back to the 1992 Olympics, at the age of 32, back in the old school style of Taekwondo, you competed at the Olympics, obviously in Barcelona. And, it was an accomplishment just even to compete at 32, really, because back then it was quite a brutal sport. And, I wouldn't say there was many people in 32 still competing at such a high level. So, I mean, that's definitely very good for yourself. I mean, it is great. But to come away with
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, to come away with gold as well. I mean that's life changing. So, I mean, can you tell us about that moment and your journey there, really?
I think there's been an evolution of Taekwondo. So our instructors fought in kind of full contact karate tournaments. They were full contact. They wore bamboo chest protectors, and they were truly tough guys. And in Korea, they were in gangs. That's what they were. These kwans were originally gangs. The same in China, were they're kuns. Our generation of guys who came up, they were truly tough guys. They were not beginners. They were guys who came up from the streets and wanted to learn how to fight better. They didn't go to Taekwondo schools to learn to fight. They wanted to learn how to fight better. So they were truly tough guys, the generation before me. My generation was still that generation of guys who, to walk into a school, you had to fight. It wasn't life skill development. There weren't a bunch of kids. You weren't doing that. So we were doing full contact Taekwondo, and in the school it was full contact. So in order to survive that and get to a level to survive that and start to compete was an arduous process. At the Olympics, they didn't score points unless you physically moved the person or physically hurt the person. So matches would be won by 1 or 2 points, and that would be a disaster for the other guy. Now the point scoring system is different, but back then it was truly a tough man fight. It was physical. You had to be an athlete. You had to be physically conditioned. You had to be able to take punishment, and you had to be able to give punishment. And so your will and your ability and your perseverance was crucial to success, and you could inflict that on someone else and affect their performance. So at the Olympics in 92, it was the end of my career. I had been number 1 through 3 in the world for 5 years or so. I competed for 8 years. I had won and beat mostly everybody that I faced, and I had won the Pan Ams, the World Cup, and a bunch of tournaments for a bunch of years. So it was a culmination of my career, but it was like anything else. I could have lost. I fought the Spanish guy in the finals in Spain in front of the King and Queen of Spain, and I had a great day. And he was supposed to win. He was world champion from the year before. So had he won, he would have won $1 million. So, he didn't. I felt bad. I didn't feel bad. I mean, it is, but it was a great opportunity, and I was very fortunate. I had friends who didn't win, and it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've watched a few of your clips as well, and I've watched some of the knockouts that you've done over the years as well, and some of them are pretty spectacular. It's very impressive,
Just, I mean, I was very scientific about my method. I was a small person compared to the guys I fought. I was 187 pounds,
Yep.
which is roughly 87 kilos. And I was fighting guys who were, 2 meters tall or taller. And so they were way taller than I was. And in order to fight those guys, they had to be afraid of you. They had to know that if they kicked, they would pay a price, and that price might be getting knocked out. So it was it was my methodology, and it worked out okay. And luckily, it was never me on the other side of that foot. And I fought some really great fighters. But it was an honor to be able to compete at that level. It was an honor to compete against the guys I competed against, and they were great fighters in their own right. And so it's always interesting when you talk about fighting, because at any given moment, any fighter can be a champion. And some champions live for a long time and are champions for a long time. And then some have their moment in time and exit or exited. So honestly, I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to compete in that generation against the types of players I did compete against. They helped me be better. And then to train in the places that I trained. And luckily, it all worked out. So the name of our schools are gold medal centers. If I had won a silver medal, they wouldn't be called silver medal centers. Nobody's coming to silver medal.
That's it. No, definitely. No, I mean, winning gold there must have undoubtedly given you exposure and opportunities. And also you received a doctorate from Rutgers Law School, which you mentioned earlier, and a master's in sport organisation management from the IOC programme at the University of Lyon in France. I mean, those achievements in themselves as well, I mean, that must have really smashed the door open when you entered into a building, really,
So I think and this is what a story that I always tell my students and people. My instructor was very big on education, and he didn't really care about your athletic accomplishments. He cared about your academic accomplishments, as did my parents. So I was fortunate enough to I was the first person in my family to graduate high school, college, law school, graduate school, and postgraduate. And I thought education, and I still believe it's important, we invest a lot in my children so that they can have a good education. At the end of the day, the thing that you will always have, regardless of what happens, is your education. You'll have your experiences, your travels, and then your friendships and relationships. Whether or not you win an Olympic gold medal or own a car or a house of a type, you may or may not have. And if anything that the COVID virus has done, it's shown us that most things in life are transitory. And you really have to start to value the things that really matter, which are family, relationships, education, and things of that sort. And exercise. I think at the end of the day, exercise and physical fitness is important.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I mean, I also read that you paid for yourself to get through the law degree as well.
When I was young, I had developed a habit of learning to pay for myself because my parents didn't have enough money for me. So when I wanted to take music lessons, I had to pay for my music lessons. When I wanted to do Taekwondo lessons, I had to pay for those. So I had a paper route, made $20 a week. $5 a week went to my parents for the house. $7 a week went to music lessons, and $4 a lesson went to Taekwondo. And the little money I had left over, maybe I'd buy my friends some pizza or Cokes, and we'd play video games maybe. So I had a very early lesson about the value of money, working for what you wanted, and then paying for it. For us, somebody was trying to call me. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Back to you. Yeah. So for us, the of that continued through when I got old, because my parents could not afford to do, so I had to pay for my own way. So I paid for my way through college, paid for my way through Olympic training, paid for my way through everything virtually in my life, including law school. And it's been a good lesson. It's been tough.
Yeah.
In times where it'd been nicer to have someone else pay for it all, but you know, life is what life is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. So I mean, you've obviously you've held a lot of positions, or a few positions of power in the World Taekwondo as well, including like the chairman of the Education Committee and vice chair of the Technical Committee. I mean, how easy was it to work within the World Taekwondo?
So the World Taekwondo Federation has a lot of problems, and the first problem is it's nationalistic in its approach to Taekwondo and what they believe. So it's a difficult place to work, and they don't always recognize ability, and they don't value ability over politics. So it was a tough place to work. Um, and it's tough for that group to accept others who may be more experienced, better education, better whatever. So, you know, the people that I was working with, Steve Kapner, Dr. Kapner, and I, both had better educations than probably everybody in the room. Both had better competition records than everyone in the room. And both had more experience in developing sport organizations than everyone in the room. Get implemented, but despite that, we were able to implement a multi-tiered system of points where the more difficult the technique, like in gymnastics, you would get more points. So if you did a kick, that should be worth more than a punch. If you did a body kick, less than a spinning kick. A spinning kick to the face, jumping kick, because if you wanted to see those techniques, just like basketball, you rewarded 3-point shot. In gymnastics, the more difficult, the more point got. That was the press.
You'd mentioned obviously that you had implemented the tiered scoring system, which was great. You were also to do with the video replay as well, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we implemented a system with video replay so that a world-class athlete, along with a referee, would sit there and review bad decisions or contested decisions. And this is, as you know, in football, in many sports used. And we found in Copenhagen, when we first did it, we enlisted the help of great athletes like Hadi and guys with Pascal, guys with world-class records, myself and a few others. We overturned 80% of the bad decisions.
Wow.
And the referees went ballistic because they knew they were wrong. And so rather than seeing it as an educational opportunity, they saw it as a challenge to their authority. And referees tend to be authoritative. Most of them don't compete. Most of them have never competed. Most of them don't understand the rules or what fighting really is. So then when we ran the coaching program here in the United States for 5 years, we realized there was a disconnect between the athletes, the coaches, and the refs. The referees were speaking a language that the athletes and coaches weren't, so it was us against them, kind of. I then brought them all into the same room and had the referees describe what they want to see. What is it that you think Taekwondo is? What do you think a point is? Why do you give a warning? So they started to communicate and we started to have improvements. That's the only way to have an improvement is if referees are willing to share, become knowledgeable, and then share their aesthetic. What do they expect to see? And that we had it scheduled for Korea, but quite frankly, the Taekwondo, the leadership there has failed the world in total.
You have now your own schools for Taekwondo, and it's successful in producing high-level athletes from Team USA, for Team USA, sorry. How do you go about teaching and developing those athletes in a system of fighting scoring that you've obviously previously voiced concerns about?
What you have to do is when you have athletes that come to you, you have to understand that they're coming to you for help for the style of Taekwondo that they're fighting. We've brought in the national and Brown, Gareth Brown, to listen to Nathan Matters and how they would train, because that's what you have to do. Unfortunately, what you have to do now is teach 3 different types of Taekwondo. You have to teach what you think Taekwondo is, which is kicking and punching and what I did. You have to teach traditional forms because that's what somebody else thinks it is, and that's how you get rank. And there is some value to that. And then you have to teach what it takes to win. So now you're teaching 3 different types of Taekwondo in order to run a Taekwondo dojo. The reality was we used to teach 2. We had stuff that we did to win. That was called Taekwondo, and we trained that in the gym because it worked in self-defense and it worked in actuality. And then you taught forms because you had to. But now you have to teach what works, which is traditional, what we did in tournament, because that's real Taekwondo. And then you have to teach the traditional stuff. And now you have to teach whatever it takes to win. And it's unfortunate because what it takes to win is a game, and it's not effective. It's just kind of tag. And there's that style has been out for time in karate. And even the karate people don't do it in tournament. They do it in point tournaments here, but they don't do it at the Olympic level. They're still using their traditional karate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, when looking into your achievements, one of the achievements that stuck out for me was in 2003, you accepted the challenge to rebuild the Afghanistan Olympic sport program. And one of the things you'd said was that, sport for them was their hope for a future. And Afghanistan, from then, won their first Summer Olympic medal during the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, with Rahala Nikpai winning a bronze in the men's Taekwondo 58 kilograms. And their second one was at the 2012 Games with another bronze from Nikpa in the 68 kilograms Taekwondo event. I mean, how amazing to even have been part of that, to be honest. It's great, to be honest. I look at that and I think that must be such a proud moment for you as well.
With some training and opportunity, they could be awesome at Taekwondo. So we brought them to Korea. We put them in a university to train. We gave them the best training that we could find for them so that they would be able to compete at a world-class level. But what's more important is not really whether they won medals or not, but we identified a challenge and something that would benefit a country and a people. So when I went there, what I saw was this group of individuals who love sport. They were practicing in burned out, bombed buildings with tarps filled with clothes for judo mats and wrapping poles that they could kick and punch. When you have such a passion for sport and for success, then you're going to get the value of sport. And so their value was not the medal. The medal is transitory. Well, their value was their day-to-day change in life, the aesthetic of training to be better. Not training to win, but training to be a better person, be better to survive, quite frankly. They then went on to excel, and that would inspire others. So the idea was that they would inspire others. So that small gift that we gave them when we went to Afghanistan right after the war and identified some athletes and then took them out of the country and then brought coaches to their country, paid off in medals, obviously, which is great and we're very proud of. But it's the investment in sport. And that was when I was working with the Olympic Council of Asia, and we invested in 45 Asian countries that needed us, whether it was Mongolia, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, whatever. And they just have a great culture of sport. They have a love of family and just pretty amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, great. It's great to be, it must have been great to be involved in all those projects, to be honest. So, yeah.
It's very, you're lucky, most of us don't have the opportunity to do all the things that we want. And even now, as I'm older, I'm trying to think about, what is the legacy that we should leave behind? And your first legacy, obviously, is always your family. And that's what my first legacy is. And then when it comes to helping others, that's in the dojo. Is there a bigger legacy that we can leave behind? It would be nice to make Taekwondo better. It would be nice to help the Koreans make it better. But sometimes you can't help everybody. They got to want help. They got to recognize they need help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's it. So can you tell us why or what made you decide to go for mayor or councilman of Foster City in California? And how does it fit in with being a Taekwondo master?
Well, it's when I moved here, we spent a lot of energy and time helping the community because Taekwondo schools should be community centers.
Yeah.
So when you come to a Taekwondo school, you're becoming part of the community. You're kind of like not a church, but you're similar. Kids are coming to parents' nights out. They're interacting with each other. They meet each other outside the school. They come to the school. They're spending a lot of time there. Their friends are there. You're developing them as people. It's unlike any other sport. At that point, the mayor, I was in Korea at the World Championships, and the mayor called me and asked me to run because he was retiring. And so I ran for council, and it was an interesting community because it's it's a very, in their mind, old community. It's been here for 40 years or so. So I was met with some opposition because I was a young guy and they thought I should wait longer. The first time I ran, I lost. I ran again and won overwhelmingly, and ran again and won again. Um, but that's life. It's politic, and it's an interesting. When you're helping people, it's interesting because we made a non-smoking rule. I made the city. Took me almost 6 years to eliminate smoking in the city anywhere, and we were met with a lot of opposition. And my colleagues didn't want to do it because they were afraid. They wanted to win another election.
Yeah.
We had to build more housing here. I supported more housing, and my colleagues wouldn't support it. They were afraid. So it was an interesting time to look at politics and politicians because there were a lot of cowards, and it's not a place for the weak of heart and cowards. So I enjoyed the 8 years I had working, and I was mayor and vice mayor and a bunch of stuff, and we got a lot of great work done. But I'm more proud of the things that we've done in the community as a martial arts school and what we stand for. The other stuff is just we were called upon to help, and if you have a skill set, I believe you should help. So I had developed a skill set with the Olympic Committee. I brought it to my city. I modernized their approach to budgets. They were always lying about the budgets, and I brought that into sharp relief. When I started on the council, they had $8 million in the bank. When I left, they had $92 million in the bank. So we did okay. So it's I don't want to run for any more office because I want to focus on my family, and I think it's harder at a higher level. But we could use some better people.
Yeah, and there's no way you would move to Scotland, is there?
I'm ready. I'm ready to move somewhere.
we
California has too many fires.
No,
Scotland is beautiful, I hear.
yeah, it's really nice. I mean, I look at California and think it's beautiful, but yeah, I know that people look at Scotland and think it's beautiful, and it is.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Yeah. No, you're welcome anytime. You know that.
Oh, my pleasure. The one place I have not been yet.
Right.
I've been
Okay.
to
Well.
77 countries. I haven't been to Scotland. I'll have
Okay.
to.
We'll have to make it happen then. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. You can bring Juan Moreno as well. You can both come across.
We travel a lot together. We spent 8 years together. He's a good man.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, I mean, I personally feel Taekwondo is great for every person, and the benefits to that person's life can help them achieve things that they never thought possible. And that is Taekwondo, the martial art, and I feel it's timeless, really, Do you see Taekwondo in the future? I mean, what and where do you see it? The sport, the art, and the organization.
So I think you always have to remember that people will teach what they think Taekwondo is or whatever the martial art that they think it is, regardless of the Olympic stuff. So whether or not you think the Olympic competition format is good or bad, when you go to the dojang, the number of children that come out of a dojang that go to the Olympics is tiny. The number of kids who go back into life that become better people is monumental. So I focus on that. So in my schools, pre-COVID, we had 800 members in one location. We probably had 2,000, 2,500 between all our locations. Those 2,500 children deserve a better life. They deserve life skill development. They deserve self-defense skills. They deserve physical fitness. So that's what my focus is. So I teach them what I believe Taekwondo to be. They kick bags and targets. These days, because of the virus, we're kicking a lot of heavy bags, which we normally don't do. We kick a lot of targets. So they're developing some real power skills and learning how to hit something pretty hard and getting really great workouts because of this. And so we continue to teach regular Taekwondo, what I believe to be Taekwondo. With the advent of what we do as people, we are the one voice that is consistent in their life with life skill development and being a good person. My instructor was my moral compass, more so than anyone else in my life, and that is our responsibility. So as we teach, as we are Taekwondo instructors, we need to remember that if you happen upon a soccer coach, a football coach that teaches you that, that's great. My son's soccer coach is from your neck of the woods. I think he's Scottish. He's an amazing soccer coach. He teaches the boys life skill development. That's how I choose my coaches. And that's what we need to do as Taekwondo instructors. So I don't believe Taekwondo will ever go away. I think that the virus will make many things go away that didn't matter. So if you were a social influencer on TikTok, you're probably out of a job. If you were a life skill coach, a life coach for somebody to feel better about themselves, you're probably out of a job. You're a Taekwondo instructor, you're always going to have a job because you're teaching kids personal development combined with physical acumen and measurable goals so that they will be able to achieve in their life. And that's timeless.
So yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, I think over in Scotland, I think Taekwondo is slowly becoming more popular and more understood as well. I look at America and I think that people value Taekwondo quite highly there. I think over here it's still looked upon as being a hobby, but it's slowly
Right.
getting a little bit better, So yeah, it's good. It's great.
I think Taekwondo has its challenges now because one of the advent of MMA, the culture of MMA isn't conducive for children or teaching children, but the effectiveness of it is not disputed. Up until MMA, Taekwondo was MMA. Taekwondo was the only full contact martial art that was competed at a high level. MMA has changed a lot of that. So what Taekwondo people have to ask themselves is where their strength lies. Their strength lies in being an art and being effective as an art, kicking harder than anybody humanly possible, and then having, quite frankly, the best footwork and kicking techniques out of anyone. That's really where our strength lies.
Yeah, definitely. And for the organisation, where do you think that will be in the future? I mean, what do you think?
The organization, the stranglehold that the Koreans have on both organizations, the WTF and the Kuki one, probably needs to change. And it won't change peacefully. It'll have to be a revolution. So uh, the most irresponsible decision made was to elect and re-elect Cho as president of the World Taekwondo Federation. He is singularly more dangerous and damaging to the sport than the COVID virus. This individual has taken the essence of what Taekwondo is because he never practiced it and allowed it to be morphed into something that it isn't. So it's an embarrassment for anyone who's ever competed at the sport at a high level. It's taken a generation of athletes and destroyed them in their physical ability because kids aren't going to practice what doesn't work in the arena. So if you want to be an Olympic champion, you're going to practice all that nonsense to win, which you should. But you're going to lose the ability to back kick, back hook kick, and do all the things that made Taekwondo valuable and good. So until Cho goes and a new generation of leaders take a hold, the WTF doesn't matter and will no longer matter because no one is watching. No one's watching it at the Olympics. No one in the sport is watching it except the ones competing. And then the guys like me, I turn it on and turn it off. I try to watch it. I just can't watch it. I feel bad for the athletes because some people take this as me saying something about the athletes. I'm not saying anything about the athletes. I'm saying something about the leadership. The athletes have to do what they have to do to win, just like we did. You know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think in some ways being in the Olympics is one of the best things for Taekwondo. But
Yeah.
at the other time, I think sometimes it's one of the worst things for being, for Taekwondo as well, because
that's what people are afraid of. So people are afraid of the same thing for karate. So karate would have its debut, and its only games will be in Japan. That will be the first games and the last game for karate. But there are many that feel with its inclusion, it gets dumbed down. Taekwondo is not hard to understand, done well. But when you dumb it down, it gets even worse to understand. So I agree that, yeah, it's both a cursing and a bless. It was great to have all the opportunities that the Olympics have afforded us, but it's also destroyed the sport.
I think when some of the things that have come in to change Taekwondo, I mean, including like the the uniform change,
Right.
And just like the octagon, I can understand it makes people fight more and stuff. I mean, including like changing some of the points is a good thing. I think it's
Right.
certainly trying to get rid of that league leg stuff. But yeah, I think they worry too much about staying in the Olympics, whereas Taekwondo, in its true form, I feel should always be in the Olympics because it is very spectacular to watch. But now,
Taekwondo in its true form would have stayed in the Olympics. So this idea that Cho was telling people that it would have been out of the Olympics if it didn't change, the only thing that needed to change was the cheating referees.
yeah,
That's it. Get competent referees and have them stop cheating, and it would have stayed. Taekwondo is no different than pancreation was. Pancreation, that was an original Olympic sport. You can't, you box as safely as you can, but it's still a brutal sport. Taekwondo brutal still survives the Olympics. Taekwondo is not fencing, nor should it be. As long as you're not losing your life, if you get knocked out, you can get knocked out in boxing. You can get knocked out in judo. You can get choked out in judo. You get knocked out falling off a horse in equestrian. The nature of sport involves a certain amount of danger, and if it doesn't, then it shouldn't be in the Olympics.
yeah,
Right? So, I mean, I have a very definite opinion about the difference between a game and sport. Bridge was trying to get in the Olympics. I was on the Olympic committee when it was trying. I'm like, are you a game or are you a sport? If you don't sweat and there's no danger, you're not a sport. They were trying to get bridge in and chess. And I'm like, chess?
Mhm.
Not unless you're playing with live players.
yeah. That's it. Big people with swords coming down. Yeah, unless it's
There
like
you go.
it can be in there. Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, the referees were definitely an issue. I mean, you look at the 2008 Olympic Games. I
Yeah.
mean, there was some controversy there as well. I
I
mean,
was I was there and I filed one of the protests as we should have. The referees are out of control. They have destroyed the sport internally. Here in the United States, they are the worst. Internationally, they learned from the worst cheaters in the world, the most horrible at it were the Koreans. And they fixed games and their top people talked about it. Lee Jung-woo outed the entire Korean community for the cheating.
okay.
And it was endemic. And it's interesting that that happened because for a sport that values honesty and humility and all this other stuff, where does honesty come in when, how do you try to teach that in the school, yet you can't manage it when you're refereeing? It's embarrassing, and it should be embarrassing, but they should own it. If you're chubby or fat and you blame the refrigerator, there's something wrong with you. Stop opening the refrigerator. Taekwondo needs to close the refrigerator, stand up, say it's chubby and fat, and fix it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, I could sit and speak to you all day about Taekwondo and your views because I know
Well,
that.
in the United States, a woman sued McDonald's, right?
Okay, no, I didn't
She
know that.
sued McDonald's because she got fat. She
Okay,
said McDonald's made her fat. McDonald's didn't make her fat. Her hand made her fat. She went to McDonald's and bought a burger.
yeah,
So it's an interesting thing when we try to blame others. I don't blame somebody else for knocking me out if I get knocked out. I
yeah,
blame my hand,
yeah.
which didn't block the kick. So
Yeah.
that's again my brutal honesty.
But that's why I'm interviewing you, to be honest, because I do
Yeah.
admire your honesty. Yeah, no, that's great. So one of your favourite quotes I found is where you say, "It doesn't matter how you start; it's how you finish." So on that, how should we finish this interview? What would you
Well,
like to add?
well,
Any
the quote.
quite
The reason I managed the quote came from I had won everything when I was competing. I was on track to become a 1988 Olympian. And I had beaten the guy who was going to I'd beaten this individual 5 times, knocked him out the first time and beaten 4 times. I overestimated I was overconfident and fought a tied match and lost. And that's okay. He's a great fighter and he went to the Olympics in 88. I had to wait 4 more years. So the quote came from that, which reminded me that everything is a marathon. So it doesn't matter how you start. It doesn't matter if you're winning to the last 100 feet. It matters whether you cross the finish line first, period. The second part, though, is it's not how you start, because the person you are, Aristotle talks about this in the Nicomachean Ethics, it's the person you become. Ultimately, you'll be judged when you're dead, not now. So it's not how you start, it's how you finish. What person do you become and how do you transform? So, in closing on this, on the interview, the lesson that I always tell people is every day is a new day. You're given a new opportunity to recreate yourself and recreate your reality. You use it. So if you don't use it, then you're destined. The only thing that is forever is the past. The future is infinitely expandable. The past is defined, it rests where it rests, and you can't change the past. You can change the future, and the power is yours to change it every moment. At every moment when you make a decision to act, you change the future. By not acting, you allow the future to change you. And it's a very powerful thing when you realize that. Um, I'm watching, this weird documentary right now about this guy who said a lot of good stuff, but then he was really kind of out of control. But he kind of, somewhere in all the nonsense, he kind of said that as well. And I think that's an important thing to remember. You are the master of your destiny. You can make a decision to be better. You can make a decision to learn something. You can make a decision to persevere. And in these times, more than now than ever, you need that life skill of perseverance to survive, because these are not easy times. Dojang owners are going out of business left and right. They have great skills, great histories. We had a school, we had 2,500 members. We don't have anywhere near that now. You have people that are afraid for their lives, and the last thing they're thinking about is going into a school to kick and punch. So we have to start over again. That's tough. It's tough to be that close. But 1988, I had to start over again. I was the best in the world, arguably, at that point. I had to go back down and work my way back up to be number one so that I could have an opportunity to go to the Olympics in '92. So if I can survive that, then we can all survive this. Life is not, nothing that we do is permanent. The only permanence that we have is the impermanence of everything. So that's kind of, it's a tough time for people now. I think it's tough for kids now. I think it's tough for everybody, because no one thing ever has been able to take everyone's stuff and make it go away. So you may be working right now if you've got a job, but everything else around you is not. So that economic reality is going to hit you at some point. The guys who aren't working right now, like in the restaurants industries or stuff like that, are starving, losing their houses. That's real. Taekwondo school owners are having a tough time. Landlords want their rents. It's a tough time, but we'll persevere, and that's what we do. And I think that's the value of what we do.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned before about in Afghanistan, those people were kicking nothing really. You know what I mean? And I think that if those great individuals in America that have dojangs and they are unfortunate to lose them, they have a great skill set and a great mindset as well, that I think they can not reinvent themselves, but they can start again and build that school again. And it's sad that
we're in a country of immigrants here and refugees. So when the Cubans left Castro's Cuba, he took everything they had. He kicked out all the rich Cubans. They came to the United States with him. Within 10 years, they owned everything again because they reinvented themselves. They knew how to be successful. So if you have that skill set and you've done it before, even if somebody takes it all, you can rebuild. You just have to have the stick-to-itiveness. People like to use that word grit now. But if you have that, yeah, you'll be fine. It'll be hard and not going to be pleasant. I'm not buying any new guitars for a while. But again, that's not the most important thing in the world.
That's it. As long as our families are safe, that's it.
Exactly. Well, the joke about guitars, right? How many is enough?
I don't know.
Just one more. Just one more.
Okay.
But the reality is you only need one, right? So my wife jokes because every time she comes in, she sees a new instrument and she's like, honey, I just need one more. That'll be enough. And it's never quite enough. But the reality is, wake up in the morning. If you have one pair of shoes, you're lucky. If you have a good family, you're lucky, and the rest will work itself out.
Definitely. Oh, great. Great. Well, sir, I mean, it's been an honour to speak to you. I mean,
No,
unfortunately,
honor to speak to you. I thank you for taking the time and caring enough to ask, and always my pleasure to share. You know, the opinions are mine. They may not be right. They're today's opinions. Come back a year from now, they might
yeah,
be different. That's the beauty of opinions. They change with age and with growth. And as I get older, hopefully they get better.
yeah, no, great. I mean, I know the video at the start wasn't perfect, but it's sorted itself out. So it looks really good, and I do appreciate everything you've done.
Well, if there's anything else I can do to help, just let me know.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure speaking to you.
I'm really glad. Thank you for your thoughts, your memories, and your predictions. I wish you continued success. And thanks for always speaking your mind. You know,
I'm going to try to get Mr. Russell. I'm going to try to get to Scotland to visit.
yeah, definitely. I've got a few castles around. I've got a few whiskey distilleries as well that I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Be my pleasure. Thank you, sir. Great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.